Hi guys! Formula One is back, and what better way to start the second half of the season than with a dominating 2-1 win in Spa. I've got all the race facts you've been waiting for, so let's get right into it. Welcome to the Studio Show. But before we get into all the facts, check out what just arrived from Spa this morning. These are all the trophies the guys won for the amazing weekend. And this one is Lewis right here. Let's check out how heavy it is. It's actually quite cool. How cool would this be actually? To have standing around, but I'm gonna put it back before I break anything. So, great weekend for the guys. Let's get into the facts right now. The race was a huge success for the team in more ways than one. Here are my fast facts from the weekend. Fact 1. It was the first Mercedes victory in Spa since 1955, then won by Juan Manuel Fangio. Fact 2. Hamilton is now tied with his all-time idol Ayrton Senna on 80 podium finishes. Fact 3. It was the 7th 1-2 finish for Mercedes in the 2015 season. Fact 4. The Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS Formula One team has now won at every circuit on the current calendar, bar Mexico. And we haven't even been there yet. Fact 5. It was also the first Belgian Grand Prix victory for a Brackley-built car. 6. The team extended their Constructor Championship lead to 426 points. They are now 184 points ahead of their closest contestant, Ferrari. But the exciting race also came with some drama. Here's what Paddy has to say about it.
Absolutely fantastic actually, because Spa is a very, very difficult track, one of the greatest tracks in the Formula One calendar and in Formula One history in fact, and one that the Mercedes team won in 1955 with the original Silver Arrows, but we haven't won that in the modern era of the Silver Arrows, so the one remaining track we hadn't won in the Formula One calendar. So really something we were aiming for from the beginning of the weekend, and fantastic to get the result at the end. A very difficult track. We got a 1-2, which is also very rare at Spa, and that's an indication of what a difficult race it is. Not least the weather will often throw a spanner in the works. Fortunately that didn't happen this weekend, but also very tough technically. There was a lot of analysis after the practice sessions on Friday about Nico's tyre. The conclusion in the end was that it was most likely caused by a big cut from external debris. So really a kind of puncture, although initially no air came out, rather bits of reinforcement which we all saw on the TV. But essentially it was a complex puncture, and we had that well understood before the race to make sure that we were in a safe condition, and we wanted both of our drivers sort of reassured that they could race safely and that they could depend on the car and the tyres. So we felt pretty happy with that. We love to get good results, and it's always something special when you can create something that's never been done before. So, you know, we like making things that can go in the history books. So fantastic for the team. Absolutely not. No, you can never depend on anything in this sport. Having said that, we're in great shape. I think we saw that the pace of the car was very strong still at this stage of the season, both in qualifying and in the race. As I said earlier, it is an unusual circuit, so I don't think we can depend on that pace advantage carrying to the remaining 8 races, but certainly it's a great position to be in. And of course we've still got anyway a competition between Nico and Lewis on the Drivers' Championship. Sebastian Vettel looking a little bit further adrift now, so hopefully that gives us more confidence that we can go down to a final championship battle between just our 2 drivers.
And if you want to see how the team celebrates after a 1-2 finish, check out our Silverstone factory debrief right here. Did you notice anything different about the cars in Spa? Well, the cars were treated to a brand new curved rear wing for the fast Belgian circuit. But why was it introduced now? The team's chief race engineer has the answers.
With Spa you need an efficient wing, so we did a lot of work in CFD, and this shape was looking like it was very efficient. You're obviously trying to keep as much downforce as you can, but get rid of a lot of the drag because of the very long straights in Spa. And once you've done that CFD work, we can then put those designs into the wind tunnel, where you sort of have the final development, make sure everything's performing well and fine-tuning. And then we also need to make sure we can go up and down on our downforce level. So there's other options around this wing that we had available in Spa. We know where it's best to run our car, but once we see how fast Red Bull are, Ferrari, Williams, we can decide if we want to tune ourselves to, to make a bit quicker on the straights or maybe a bit faster in the corners. Well, the shape of the rear wing, it just needs to work with the aerodynamic flow structures that are arriving at it. So that's all tuned in the wind tunnel. The important bit though is how much downforce do you get and how much drag does it have? Because obviously Spa Sector 2, it's all about corners. There's almost as many corners in that sector as in some normal circuits. So you want lots of grip on the car, and the drivers like that grip because the corners are all linked together and they're able to really attack them. But then you get into sectors 1 and 3, and there's a slow corner, some super fast corners like Eau Rouge and Blanchimont, but they're flat, so you can't go much quicker by having more downforce. And in those sectors, it's about having low drag. So you want to be able to sort of hit really high top speeds. It's the first circuit where we've gone to a real mid downforce level. So we had options to run a bit less drag in Montreal, but Spa, you've got massive straights. You're at full throttle for 1.8 kilometres at one point. So you can't run your normal wing. If we ran our normal wing, it would have been too slow on the straights. If people had got behind us, they'd have been able to get past. So you've got to move to a different level, and then next week again in Monza, you go even lower. But then the rest of the year, we're back to the normal sort of big wings. Most circuits nowadays, you can get away with the same wing. The two where you've really got to tune it are Monza, which is super fast, super low downforce, and you need a very, very efficient wing there, and Spa. Now you don't have to make a new wing, but if you didn't, you're just giving up performance. And we obviously want to try and win every race, so these are races where you've got to make a special effort, and that means the guys over in the wind tunnel have to work and design these parts and develop them. We get them made, and you've got bespoke parts for certain circuits. But these days there aren't many special circuits like that. It's just 2 or 3. But they're very interesting, and they always present different challenges. And you see a shuffling of the order. Some teams that aren't so competitive suddenly end up being right at the front.
That's it for this week's Studio Show. We'll be back next week with a preview from Monza, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you next week. Tschüss!